One of the ways that we've looked at providing housing have changed over the years. Over the years, we've looked at various ways to provide housing. And starting in 1937, that's when we started with the projects as they're known today. That was government housing projects that were directly subsidized and built by the federal government. That is those brick buildings that I mentioned in the last slide. Then in 1974, after having kind of seen this initial program run its course and not quite getting it where we wanted it to go, we pulled out the Section 8 program, now often referred to as the Housing Choice Voucher Program, also known as the HUD housing program. This is the vouchers that allow tenants to go and choose where they are going to live, or they can also be a project-based voucher, which means they are assigned to that particular apartment community. But these are the vouchers that anybody can take to any commercial landlord and say, hey, I've got this voucher. Do you accept this payment? In some cities, you can refuse to accept Section 8 vouchers altogether. In others, you don't have that choice so long as the amount of the voucher meets the amount of the rent that is requested at the particular apartment complex or private housing, wherever you may be. Section 8 is primarily subsidized for existing housing. It can help in building new housing in some cases because those project-based vouchers, I mentioned that instead of an individual going to the individual landlord and saying, hey, I want to be able to use my voucher to live here, you have the housing authority placing, say, 20 units in Project A on 123 Main Street, and they're saying we're providing all 20 of these with a voucher payment that's guaranteed money for that landlord, in exchange for which you take anybody in our program that certifies and is in the Section 8 program, and you agree to put them in one of these 20 units. And that's called a project-based voucher. Other ways in which we've tried to help incentivize the building and development of affordable housing is through federally subsidized loans. So Fannie and Freddie are the GSEs. They have specialized programs and loan programs. So does HUD, specifically for affordable housing. A lot of these programs will have a longer amortization period, so 35 or even 40 years. Some of them, like HUD, are completely amortized. So unlike most commercial real estate loans, where those loans are only locked for, say, 5 years or even 10 years, but the amortization is for 25 or 30, so you're going to have a balloon payment. In these, what you actually have is the ability to have that full term of that loan amortized in a HUD space. The other thing they do is they allow for a higher, what's called DASCR, debt service coverage ratio. And what that means is the amount of debt that a property can carry in relation to how much money it makes. So in most commercial real estate loans, you're probably looking at least a 1.25 to a 1.5. To break that down even simpler, if that property makes $100,000 a year after it pays all of its expenses, right? So it's net operating income. Then you can only have $85,000 a year in debt service on it, right? They're withholding a certain amount of fudge factor above what the actual property makes to make sure that that property is not overburdened with debt. And when you're dealing with a LIHTC project, you can go as low as a 115 to a 110 DSCR if needed and still have those projects move forward as far as the debt underwriting goes. Makes a big difference. I'll do another presentation at some point in time breaking that down further, showing what those numbers look like. So other initiatives, state provided options, direct construction, land grants, financial incentives, a pilot program, payment in lieu of taxes, where upon the developer knows they're only going to pay X amount of taxes, not whatever the regular going rate is for that property. You can also see TIFs, tax increment funding, wherein they have a special funding district to put funds directly into that project. CDBG came around 1974, around the same time as Section 8. These are community development block grants. Those are generally administered through the housing authority and can come in and pay for the infrastructure on the project. 1986 comes along, and we've been limping along with Section 8 and CDBG and some federal programs, and we've still got our government program, or our government-funded housing. The projects are getting old. We're not really keeping them up as well as we should, the reason why they're known as the projects. And somebody said, hey, why don't we do this as a public-private partnership? Why don't we go ahead and pull in all of these private developers and get them to help us build affordable housing? And that's where the LIHTC program was born. It stands for Low Income Housing Tax Credit. It's part of the Tax Reform Act of 1986. And what it is an exchange in which the developer owner says, we promise to make this property affordable for a period of 15 to 30 years. Now, I say 45 or 50 on here because in Texas, California, and some other states, this period of affordability has been stretched out to that or sometimes more. In exchange, we, the developer, are going to get tax credits to the tune of either 4% or 9%. I'll go over that in a second. Hold on. And those 4% and 9% are going to come as equity in the deal, thereby lowering my debt service so that I can afford to charge lower rents and still have the property make enough money to meet that 1.15 debt service coverage ratio and be able to have a loan. So far, since 1987, the LIHTC program has provided about 3.44 million units.